While I was teaching at SDSU when I first started, one of the things I got asked to teach was a course in AutoCAD for electronics students, which led to me being hired by Daktronics in Brookings to teach a course at night to some of their workers in AutoCAD, and part of that was to bring groups together. So I taught mostly engineering, but there were some design people and some out of sales, etc., that were taking AutoCAD courses. I'd never worked with AutoCAD, but that didn't bother me. I knew that I could learn any computer software by that time. Also, as part of that, I needed to get access to computers during the summer because Daktronics wanted me to teach a number of courses during the summer, including something called PageMaker. And so I talked to some people at Dakota Micromanagement in Madison, South Dakota, where I was living at the time. And Mike Waldner specifically was running it at the time, and he eventually took it over completely. And I just needed access to computers to do the AutoCAD, which they had, and so I could prep for my classes. And along with that, I wanted to get some actual real hands-on experience with the computer hardware, software, etc., things like that. And I offered to work for them to keep the place open in the mornings when they were busy, when Mike had class and some things like that. He was still in school at the time. And that instead of paying me, I would just, watch the store and do whatever computer stuff that came up and get access to the computers. Right early on in that, in the first couple of weeks, they had been working with a law firm up in Clear Lake, the Gunderson law firm, and had promised them they were converting from one type of computer system, a kind of proprietary computer system from a company called Digital Research. And along with that, they were converting to the PC type computers, which Dakota Micromanagement sold and worked on. And they had one of the people who had sold them this system up there in Clear Lake had promised them that they would get this Diablo daisy wheel printer to work with the new system, and that had come with the old system. And the two other owners, other than Mike, that were technically inclined, they both worked up on campus in the computer support, and in fact, one of them was in charge of that area and was their head technician at Dakota State University at the time. I've been trying to get this printer to work for weeks, and we're getting nowhere with it. And Mike said, "Can you have a look at it?" And I started messing around with it, and it took me about a half hour to get it to actually print something. It wasn't the right stuff, but it was something. And it took me a couple hours to figure out that whoever set it up for the digital system that it had been on had rewired the printer slightly. They had changed a couple of settings, and I went in and figured out what they were and changed it back and fixed it. And a couple hours later, it was printing exactly as it was supposed to, something that they had promised them for a long time. And I got it. They had been working on it for a long time, and I figured it out rather quickly. I ended up working at Dakota Micromanagement for a number of years. They did eventually start paying me. And at the same time, I was working on my master's degree at SDSU, and eventually teaching full-time at SDSU. And during part of that, I also taught part-time night classes in Sioux Falls for Dakota State. I ended up driving a lot, sometimes putting in over 1,000 miles a week on my car. And basically, it ended up, most of the money that I made at working at Dakota Micro ended up just paying for my vehicle and for the driving and stuff. I lived on fast food, and I was working 80 hours a week and wasn't really getting ahead all that much, but I learned a lot. And one of the things that came out of all of this is that I realized that I had a special talent for computers, that I wasn't just as good as the next person. I was better, noticeably better, much better. And it was something that has served me well since then. After a while at Dakota Micro, Mike hired some other people. One of them ended up taking over the business, kind of shoving Mike out, which didn't exactly make me happy at the time, but I was like, whatever. But within 2 weeks of him taking over, he came up to me and said that the other technician, Eric Weber, had told him that he thought I was making too much money and that they should cut my wages. And I told the guy at the time, absolutely not. If you're going to cut my wages, you can cut it to zero. And later, I talked to Eric, because it kind of took me back a bit, because I got along very well with Eric, and I asked him about it. He said, I never said anything like that. I did ask him for a raise, but nothing more than that. At that moment, I knew that my time at Dakota Micro was short. And so I started making plans for other alternatives. And I ended up getting everything in place with the help of my cousin Mary. Moved up to Brookings, got everything in place to do that before I went in and told the then owner that I quit. And at the time, he owed me 2 weeks vacation pay that I was due. And I said, I will stay the next 2 weeks, but I expect you to pay that. Well, he had a fit. He went running over to his lawyer. He said, I'm not paying the vacation pay. And I said, well, then I can be done the end of today. And I was ready for all of that. I had an apartment already set up here in Brookings, and I was ready to go. Turned out he did honor and pay me. I moved to Brookings. The day after my last day at Dakota Micro, I started my own computer company, Computers, Network Systems, and Support, which Mary Christopherson, my cousin, helped me with a lot. I ended up mostly hiring part-time college students. Nicole Tolley, who later was Nicole Weisbeck, was my first employee and really a good worker, and a number of other ones. I ended up hiring Deborah DeYoung and Candy and some others. One of the real standouts too was my cousin Rita, Mary's sister. She worked there during her college and stuff, and really went pretty well. I ended up, though, working a lot of hours because I was still full-time at SDSU. Working a computer store basically full-time as well. I was putting in, again, around 80 hours a week, driving a lot. I learned a lot, did a lot, but I didn't really get much ahead because the costs, etc., of running the business. And probably my biggest mistake was when I decided that instead of having all these college students, that I would hire a couple of full-time people. And the full-time people really didn't work out that well. And 1999, the Y2K issue, which I tried to minimize and get my customers to understand that it wasn't going to be as big a deal, but most computer companies did not do that. They took advantage of people and oversold. The industry got oversold, and not long after that, I was kind of forced to close down the retail store and really just run the business out of my home, which in a lot of ways has been a very good thing, less stressful, and I still do that to this day. I mostly just work with businesses, and most of them I work with have been with me for years, and it works out very good, I believe, for both of us.